hearing about UFOs being sighted once again.
For civilian pilots raises real safety concerns and limits our ability to understand UAPs. This is a particular piece of this conversation that I am very interested in. Now, our last hearing inspired us to introduce the Safe Airspace for Americans Act, joined by Chairman Grothman, Chairwoman Mace, and a bipartisan group of co-sponsors. I see some of our leaders from Safe Airspace for Americans Act here, and that would create a safe reporting for UAP process, which we want to continue to do. Now, members of both parties and senior officials in multiple administrations have now taken an interest in this issue. Mainstream media, in many cases, is beginning to take more of an interest in this issue, and we should all be proud to carry that work and build confidence for the American people. I believe we can always be more transparent. To me, this hearing and others are simply about the truth and getting to the facts of what these UAPs actually are. It's very important that we show that Democrats and Republicans in Congress can work together to cut through misinformation and look for a serious and thoughtful way to have the discussion in public. Many of us have also called for additional public hearings to discuss UAPs. This should be a topic that continues on throughout the Congress so we can gather more information, data, and work with the relevant agencies to gather more information. Finally, I just want to add that those that are here on this dais, many of us have participated also in classified briefings as well, and where we have also gained a lot of important, I think, and interesting information, at least I personally have. And so with that information, we want to continue today's hearing, and I thank all of our witnesses for being here. And with that, I'd like to yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia, and I've now like to recognize Mr. Grothman for a 5-minute introduction.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here one more time. This is a topic I've been interested in since 8th grade. I'd like to thank Ms. Mace for working with me on this topic and for making this a joint subcommittee hearing. Last year, the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border and Foreign Affairs here held an historic hearing to understand the potential national security risk of unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs. We heard from former Navy Commander David Fravor, who shared firsthand experience with a UAP engaged while on duty in the Pacific. We learned from David Gresh, a former member of the intelligence community, who revealed the supposed existence of secret government programs hidden from congressional oversight. Additionally, former military pilot Ryan Graves informed us of the limited ways in which the military and commercial pilots report UAP sightings. Since that last hearing, I've led several briefings with government agencies to deepen my understanding of these issues. First, the Department of Defense Inspector General's Office.
Thanks for tuning in.
The Department of Defense does not have a streamlined process for service members to report UAP activity. Since then, the Joint Chiefs have implemented standards for UAP reporting across the services. The Intelligence Community Inspector General informed us that whistleblowers often fear retaliation for reporting mismanagement of highly sensitive government projects or information. Finally, AARO has expressed to the committee that, like any other federal government agency, it's faced challenges in its establishment, specifically in hiring staff to manage UAP historical records and coordinating with other federal agencies. While these agencies have been helpful to us in understanding the challenges that come from collecting UAP data, none of them have been able to substantiate the claims made at this hearing last year by David Rush. Despite our committee members endlessly questioning these agencies inside and outside of a skiff, I hope our witnesses today will be able to provide evidence and content that is worthwhile to our pursuits of eliminating government waste and increasing transparency. To help alleviate some of the roadblocks, I'm supportive of measures that were included in last year's National Defense Authorization Act to increase transparency and improve record-keeping measures when it comes to UAPs. But I believe there's still more work to go. I co-led the Safe Airspace for Americans Act with Ranking Member Garcia, which requires the Federal Aviation Administration to develop procedures to collect UAP data from civilian aviators. I look forward to working with members of Congress to see that this legislation and other UAP legislation crosses the finish line. I'm deeply alarmed by the reporting of the massive drone swarm that flew over Langley Air Force Base in Virginia last December. Langley is the home of the 1st Fighter Wing, which maintains half of the F-22s in the U.S. Air Force inventory. Reports of this incident indicate these drones were roughly 20 feet long, flying more than 100 miles an hour at an altitude of over 3,000 feet. Yet the origin of these drones and their operators remains a mystery. This incident and other sightings near sensitive military installations highlights the complexity of the UAP challenge facing our intelligence, defense, and homeland security committees. Whether these phenomena are the result of foreign adversaries developing advanced technologies or something else entirely, we must take them seriously, investigate them thoroughly, and assess their implications on national defense. The repeated UAP sightings around sensitive military sites underscores the need for innovative defensive strategies beyond traditional measures. They also highlight the urgent need for updated policies to address emerging threats as well as more effective interagency cooperation and intelligence sharing. However, none of this is going to be possible without transparency. For far too long, critical information about UAPs has been either classified or ignored, leaving the American public and key congressmen without clarity needed to make informed decisions. Declassifying reports and fostering a more open dialogue about UAPs will not only increase the public trust, but also encourage collaboration between government, the scientific community, and our allies. Quite frankly, there's been things that have been kept secret that is, I think, old enough that there is no reason it shouldn't be released, regardless of any so-called, private information. A transparent approach will allow us to share insights, identify patterns, and develop new strategic defenses. As we continue to investigate these phenomena, we must do so with a mindset of protecting our country, advancing scientific discovery, and upholding the trust of the American people, who right now I don't think have trust. And it's just obvious. I don't have trust. We cannot shy away from the unknown, especially when the stakes are so high. I look forward to discussing these matters with the witnesses today. I'm hopeful we can learn from the testimony and come out of this hearing with actionable ideas to advance UAP transparency. Actually, the idea is just to say, in my mind, go back 15 years and everything has to be released. I'm hopeful that we can learn from their testimony and come out of this hearing. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. I'll now recognize Mr. Moskowitz for a 5-minute introduction.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good morning, everyone. I first want to thank the chairs and ranking members for holding the hearing today on this topic, and again, having a second hearing. I want to thank the witnesses for coming forward today to share your expertise on UAPs and the need to build trust through transparency. But first, I want to mention, you might be wondering why Chairman Comer has allowed me to be a ranking member today, but it's really only because our dear friend, Jerry Connolly, is not here. As Chairwoman Mace mentioned, he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, and all of us on this committee know Jerry, and he's a fighter, and we're praying for him and hoping for his speedy recovery. So today's hearing marks this committee's second meeting dedicated to UAP transparency. I was pleased, as I know all of us are, on the bipartisanship that existed in last year's hearing, and even though we can't talk about what happens in the classified settings, the bipartisanship that has existed in those settings with the questions members have asked. Last year's hearing was a great example of open dialogue about UAPs, and we must remain committed to share information with the American people. And I think you see that commitment based
Thanks
on
for tuning in.
here and the commitment across the political spectrum.
UFOs
have worked
are
with
here.
multiple members of this committee, but I want to really thank Congressman Burchett, Mace, Luna, and Garcia for working on bipartisan pieces of legislation. In recent years, Congress has taken numerous bipartisan steps towards greater transparency. In 2022, in the NDAA, we created the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office to investigate unidentified flying objects. Following Arrow, along with ODNI, released an unclassified report on UAP sightings. Of the 366 sightings included in the report, 171 remain uncharacterized, with some of these appearing to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. That's a nice way of saying we don't want to tell you what they are. In March,
era revealed a report on the historical record of U.S. government involvement with UAPs, which covered investigatory efforts going back from 1945 to the present day.
Damn.
Earlier this year, I joined Congressman Burchett to introduce the UAP Transparency Act, which would require the declassification of all documents related to UAPs with many other members of this committee. In fiscal year 2024, the NDA required the National Archives and Records Administration to establish the Unidentified Anonymous Phenomena Records Collection. This collection will include digital copies of all unidentified UAP records that can be publicly disclosed. This commitment in transparency is vitally important, and unnecessary overclassification has led to a void of information, which has allowed theories over the decades to foster. When the American people and members of Congress ask, are reports of UAPs credible, we're met with stonewalling. We're met with responses of I can't tell you, and in fact, we're met with people not wanting us to have hearings. We're met with people not wanting us to ask you questions. In fact, many of us were told not to ask some of you certain questions on certain topics. In a time of heightened distrust of our government institutions, I believe more transparency is not only needed, but is possible. And obviously we can respect national security limits, but we also have to provide our constituents with the information and oversight that they have tasked us for. As part of this, government agencies must maintain open lines of communication with members of Congress. And there are regular questions that Americans have. What are UAPs? Are they real? Are they ours? How has this technology been developed? How do they get funded? Right? And now we've seen this has gone from a long time ago where you could discredit people because it's some guy living in a Winnebago. You're able to see people now, these are pilots, these are military, these are folks with serious backgrounds. This has changed the face of this because now we have video.
Absolutely.
People have questions. We know there are advanced technology programs. Almost 15 years ago, one of those came out of Area 51 to go after Osama bin Laden. And the only reason we know about that is because one of those helicopters was downed. Americans have questions about whistleblowers who have come forward to talk about retribution. And so I want to thank everyone for being involved today on trying to get more transparency. This has been bipartisan, bicameral, and as we get into a new administration, the president-elect has talked about opportunities to declassify information on UAPs, and I hope he lives up to that promise. And with that, I yield back.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moskowitz. And I would now, committee staff asked me to go ahead and I will do it, to enter into the congressional record this 12-page document that Michael Schellenberger brought today that describes the Immaculate Constellation government program. So we will do that now. Every member up here has a copy of it. The first section talks about the unacknowledged special access program called Immaculate Constellation. And the second section about USG imagery intelligence. And Representative Luna just told me if I say Immaculate Constellation, I'll be on some list. Maybe a FISA warrant, so come at me, bro, I guess. But without objection, entered in the record. All right, so next we will introduce our witnesses for today's hearing. Thank you so much for being here. Our first witness is retired Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, who retired from the U.S. Navy and is now the Chief Executive Officer at Ocean STL Consulting. Our second witness is Mr. Lou Elizondo, a former Department of Defense official and author of a recent bestseller book about UAPs. Our third witness is Mr. Michael Schellenberger, founder of the newsletter Public and author of a recent journalistic piece about special access programs, including one widely identified as Immaculate Constellation. I swear the staff wants me on a list. Okay. And our last witness today is Mr. Michael Gold, a former
This is going to be
NASA
very
official
interesting.
who is also a member of the NASA UAP Independent Study Team. Welcome, everyone. We are pleased to have you today. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise your right hands. This is where it gets real. Do you solemnly swear to affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witnesses all answered in the affirmative. We appreciate all of you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statements and they will appear in full in the hearing record. You guys may be seated. Please limit your oral statements to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button in front of you so the microphone is turned on so that everyone in the room, members included, can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes has expired, and we would ask that you please wrap it up. So I will first recognize Rear Admiral Gallaudet to please begin your opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman, Ranking Members Connolly and Garcia, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAP. Confirmation that UAPs are real came to me in January of 2015 when I was serving as the commander of the Navy Meteorology and Oceanography Command. At the time, my personnel were participating in a pre-deployment naval exercise off the U.S. East Coast. It included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group, and this exercise was overseen by the United States Fleet Forces Command, led by a 4-star admiral who at the time was also my superior officer. During this exercise, I received an email on Navy's secure network from the operations officer of U.S. Fleet Forces Command. The email was addressed to all the subordinate commanders, and the subject line read in all capital letters, "Urgent Safety of Flight Issue." The text of the email was brief but alarming, with words to the effect, "If any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP. We are having multiple near mid-air collisions, and if we do not resolve this soon, we are going to have to shut down the exercise." Attached to the email is what is now known as the Go Fast video, captured on the forward-looking infrared sensor of one of the Navy F-A-18 aircraft participating in the exercise. The now declassified video showed an unidentified
Thanks for
object
joining.
exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal. The implication of the email was clear. The author was asking whether any of the recipients were aware of classified technology demonstrations that could explain these objects. Because the DoD policy is to rigorously deconflict such demonstrations with live exercises, I was confident this was not the case. The very next day, that email disappeared from my account and those of the other recipients without explanation. Moreover, the commander of Fleet Forces Command and the operations officer never discussed the subject. Even during weekly meetings specifically designed to address issues affecting exercises like the one in which the Theodore Roosevelt Strike Group was participating. This lack of follow-up was very concerning to me. As the Navy's chief meteorologist at the time, I was responsible for reducing safety of flight risks. Yet it appeared to me that no one at the flag officer level was addressing the safety risks posed by UAPs. Instead, pilots were left to mitigate these threats on their own without guidance or support. I concluded that the UAP information must have been classified within a special access program managed by an intelligence agency. That is a compartmented program that even senior officials, including myself, were not read into. Last year's UAP hearing before this oversight committee confirmed that UAP-related information is being withheld from senior officials and members of Congress. And just this week, I learned from former DoD official Chris Mellon that satellite imagery of UAP from a few years ago still has not been shared with Congress. Equally concerning, last year's UAP hearing also revealed that elements of the government are engaged in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Having never signed a non-disclosure agreement regarding UAPs, and now as a private citizen, I have become an advocate for greater UAP transparency from the government. The continued overclassification surrounding UAPs has not only hindered our ability to effectively address these phenomena, but has also eroded trust in our institutions. While I applaud previous bipartisan legislation passed by Congress concerning UAPs, a more comprehensive approach is needed to address the broader implication of UAP on public safety and national security, as well as the socioeconomic opportunities that open UAP research could unlock. Therefore, I recommend Congress take the following action, which I believe will receive bipartisan support. First, establish robust oversight of the executive branch's management of UAP information by directing key officials, beginning with the director of the DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, to provide comprehensive briefings on what the government knows about UAP and does not know. Two, enact the provisions of the UAP Disclosure Act that establish a UAP Records Review Board to ensure independent oversight, transparency, and accountability in the government's handling of UAP information. And 3, strengthen the UAP Disclosure Act in future reauthorizations with provisions that mandate a whole-of-government approach to addressing UAP. In closing, I will share my personal reasons for speaking out on this topic. First, as a former science agency leader, having led the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, I've always sought the truth in human knowledge and thought. Now that we know UAP are interacting with humanity, and these include unidentified submerged objects in the ocean, we should not turn a blind eye, but instead boldly face this new reality and learn from it. Additionally, at a time when leaders in government leave much to be desired, I feel obligated to show moral leadership on this issue of UAP disclosure by validating the credibility of the courageous men and women who have come out as witnesses and whistleblowers to expose the truth. My speaking out has encouraged others to do the same, and it's my hope over time that a number of your constituents will want to know the truth and about UAP, and this number will increase to such an extent that the congressional action I've just recommended will become inevitable. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. I will now recognize Mr. Elizondo for his opening statement.
Greetings, Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Rothman, Ranking Members Connolly and Garcia, and members of the committee. It is my honor and privilege to testify before you on the issue of unidentified anomalous phenomenon, formerly known as UFOs. On behalf of our brave men and women in uniform and across the intelligence community, as well as my fellow Americans who have awaited this day,
Thanks for
thank you
joining.
for your leadership on this important matter. Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies. For many years, I was entrusted with protecting some of our nation's most sensitive programs. In my last position, I managed a special access program on behalf of the White House and the National Security Council. As such, I appreciate the need to protect certain sensitive intelligence and military information. I consider my oath to protect secrets as sacred, and I will always put the safety of the American people first. With that said, I also understand the consequences of excessive secrecy and stovepiping. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the aftermath of 9/11, which many of us remember all too well. I believe that America's greatness depends on 3 elements. A watchful Congress, B, a responsive executive branch, and C, an informed public. Over the last decade and a half, I learned that certain UAP programs were and are operating without any of these elements. Although much of my government work on the UAP subject still remains classified, excessive secrecy has led to grave misdeeds against loyal civil servants, military personnel, and the public, all to hide the fact that we are not alone in the cosmos.
My.
A small cadre within our own government involved in the UAP topic has created a culture of suppression and intimidation that I've personally been victim to, along with many of my former colleagues. This includes unwarranted criminal investigations, harassment, and efforts to destroy one's credibility. Most Americans would be shocked to learn that the Pentagon's very own Public Affairs Office openly employs a professional psychological operations officer as the singular point of contact for any UAP-related inquiries from citizens and the media. This is unacceptable. Many of my former colleagues and I have provided classified testimony to both the Department of Defense and the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Many of us have subsequently been targeted by this cabal with threats to our careers, our security clearances, and even our lives. This is not hyperbole, but a genuine fact, and this is wrong. To fix these problems, I propose 3 principal actions. First, Congress and the President should create a single point of contact responsible for a whole-of-government approach to the UAP issue. Currently, the White House, CIA, NASA, the Pentagon, Department of Energy, and others play a role, but no one seems to be in charge, leading to unchecked power and corruption. Second, we need a national UAP strategy that will promote transparency and help restore the American public's trust at a time when the public's trust is at an all-time low. This strategy should include a whole-of-government approach, including the academic and scientific communities, the private sector, and our international partners and allies. Third, Congress should create a protected environment so whistleblowers desperate to do the right thing can come forward without fear. As it currently stands, these whistleblowers suffer because of stigma, a code of silence, and concerns about retaliation. These whistleblowers should be encouraged to come forward in ways that protect them against any forms of retaliation. Policies and procedures should ensure that protection, and for those who refuse to cooperate, it is up to the members of this committee and other lawmakers to wield their subpoena power against hostile witnesses and prevent additional government funding to those UAP efforts that remain hidden from congressional oversight. In closing, we as Americans have never been afraid of a challenge. In fact, we thrive on them. Whether it's eradicating polio or going to the moon, we don't run from a challenge, we take it head on. To the incoming administration and Congress, I say to you, we need immediate public transparency, and this hearing is an important step on that journey. If we approach the UAP topic in the same way as we as Americans have met other challenges, we can restore our faith in our government institutions. Together, we can usher in a new era of accountable government and scientific discovery. I believe that we as Americans can handle the truth, and I also believe the world deserves the truth.
Right.
Thank you, esteemed members of Congress, for your time today. It is profoundly appreciated by many.
Thank you. I ask unanimous consent for Representatives Ogles of Tennessee and Beaupert of Colorado to be waived onto the subcommittee for today's joint subcommittee hearing for the purpose of asking questions. Without objection, so ordered. I would now like to recognize Mr. Schellenberger for his introductory remarks.
Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Connolly, Ranking Member Garcia, members of the subcommittees, thank you for inviting my testimony. One of Congress's most important responsibilities is oversight of the executive branch in general and the military and intelligence community in particular.
Thanks for tuning in, Ryan.
Unfortunately, there is a growing body of evidence that the U.S. government is not being transparent about what it knows about unidentified anomalous phenomena, and that elements within the military and the IC are in violation of their constitutional duty to notify Congress of their operations. President-elect Donald Trump and former President Barack Obama have both said that the government has information about UAPs that it has not released. There are other explanations for UAPs than that they represent a new form of life or non-human life. Current dominant alternative theories, including those put forward by AARO, are that UAPs are some kind of natural phenomena we don't yet understand, like ball lightning or plasma. They could also be part of some new U.S. or foreign government weapons programs, such as drones, aircraft, balloons, CGI, hoaxes, or birds. Whatever UAPs are, Congress must be informed, as must the people of the United States. We have a right to know what UAPs are, no matter what they are. However, we now have existing and former U.S. government officials who have told Congress that AARO and the Pentagon have broken the law by not revealing a significant body of information about UAPs, including military intelligence databases that have evidence of their existence as physical craft. One of those individuals is a current or former U.S. government official acting as a UAP whistleblower. This person has written a report. This is the report that says the executive branch has been managing UAP NHI issues without congressional knowledge, oversight, or authorization for some time, quite possibly decades. Furthermore, these individuals have revealed the name of an active and highly secretive DoD unacknowledged special access program, or USAP. The source of that document told me that the USAP is a strategic intelligence program that is part of the U.S. military family of long-standing, highly sensitive programs dealing with various aspects of the UAP problem. The new UAP whistleblower claims that the U.S. military and IC database includes videos and images taken using infrared, forward-looking infrared, full-motion video, and still photography. The report that was just shared with Congress says Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or parent USAP that consolidates observations of UAPs by both tasked and untasked collection platforms. Immaculate Constellation includes high-quality imagery intelligence and measurement and signature intelligence of UAPs, the whistleblower's report adds. The sources of this intelligence are a blend of directed and incidental collection capabilities, positioned in low Earth orbit, the upper atmosphere, as well as military and civilian aviation altitudes and maritime environments. The report to Congress details in detail various UAPs, including spheres, orbs, disks, saucers, ovals, triangles, boomerang, arrowhead, and irregular organic. The report describes various incidents found in the human intelligence databases. One involved orbs surrounding and forcing an F-22 out of its patrol area. In another incident, the crew of a Navy aircraft carrier watched a small orange-red sphere rapidly descend from a high altitude of 100 to 200 yards directly above the flight deck of the CVN, or aircraft carrier. And since my reporting on this immaculate constellation last month, another source came forward who told me that they saw a roughly 13-minute long, high-definition, full-color video of a white orb UAP coming out of the ocean approximately 20 miles off the coast of Kuwait. It was filmed from a helicopter. Then halfway through the video, the person said the orb is joined by another orb that briefly comes into the frame from the left before rapidly moving again out of the frame. The person discovered the video on SIPR, the Secure Internet Protocol Router Network, which the DoD uses to transmit classified information. A leading UAP researcher who utilizes the Freedom of Information Act to find out what the government knows, John Greenwald, told me last year that the US government had been increasingly denying his requests for UAP information. He has been doing FOIA requests for 27 years and has an archive of 3 million pages. The government has for decades denied any interest in UFOs, he told me, but the documents that he has assembled show that behind the scenes, it was a completely different story. Contrary to the hopes of many advocates of transparency, the government has been restricting more information since the leak of 3 UAP videos in 2017. The DoD organization AARO has been labeling many documents with a B7 exemption, which Greenwald says does not make any sense. They're stating that anything AARO does is involved in law enforcement investigation, which allows AARO to not release it. Greenwald says that the DoD has denied the existence of a UAP and ATIP-related records on multiple occasions, only to acknowledge them after an appeal was filed. He added that the Naval Air Systems Command in March 2022 stated they found no additional UAP videos. It seems strange that they had 3 and only those 3, but other requests had been filed by the Black Vault, that's John Greenwald's group, to seek out more places UAPs might be hiding. Then in September 2022, the Navy admitted that the UAP-related videos and photographs existed, but denied the request in full for their release, saying that the requested videos contain sensitive information that are classified and exempt from disclosure. The DoD will deny things on a Monday and then admit to it on a Friday, said Greenwald. He said the government can and does release videos that protect secret methods of capturing it. They fall back on a sensitive platform excuse a lot, he said. However, the on-screen information can be blurred and scrubbed. The metadata can be removed. I'll show you this example here. This is a presentation from the UATP task force. This is completely absurd. It's nuts, this level of censorship, of redaction on a document. It shows the redaction of how many reports they've collected, for how many years. 2 of the 3 potential explanations are blacked out. The Pentagon, the intelligence community is treating us like children. It's time for us to know the truth about this. I think that we can handle it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I would now like to recognize Mr. Gold for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman Mace, Chairman Groffman, Ranking Members Connolly and Garcia, Representative Moskowitz, and distinguished members of both subcommittees. I'm grateful to all of you, as well as your intrepid staff, for the opportunity to testify, and would like to begin by discussing courage. Courage is what it takes to tackle this topic, and courage in the face of adversity is what I see in front of me, beside me, and behind me. Per my introduction, I am currently the Chief Growth Officer at Redwire Space and have had several leadership positions at NASA. That being said, I want to be clear that I am speaking exclusively on my own behalf and not for Redwire, NASA, or any other organization. However, I am here today to speak out for science. Science requires data, which should be collected without bias or prejudice. Yet, whenever the topic of UAP arises, those who wish to explore the phenomena are often confronted with resistance and ridicule. For example, members of the NASA UAP Independent Study Team, particularly those in academia, were mocked and even threatened for simply having the temerity to engage in the study of UAP. Our best tool for unlocking the mystery of UAP is science, but we cannot conduct a proper inquiry if the stigma is so overwhelming that just daring to be part of a NASA research team elicits such a vitriolic response. Therefore, one of the most important actions that can be taken relative to exposing the truth of UAP is to combat the stigma. And this is where I believe that NASA can be eminently helpful. The NASA brand is synonymous with hope, optimism, and credibility. If you were to take a walk down the National Mall, you would immediately see the NASA logo on t-shirts, hats, and bumper stickers. Few federal agencies enjoy this kind of popularity. I've never seen anyone wearing an Office of Personnel Management t-shirt, which is why NASA could play such an influential role. Specifically, NASA could, with relatively little cost and effort, host symposia on UAP. or even just participate in existing panels examining the topic. NASA personnel stepping forward and participating in such discussions would make a powerful statement to the scientific community that UAP should be taken seriously and researched accordingly. In regard to research, NASA has vast archives, much of which may contain important UAP data. Again, for relatively little cost and effort, NASA could create an AI or ML algorithm that could search the agency's archives for anomalous phenomena. I suspect that such an effort would not only result in information that will help us to understand UAP, but could result in data that will assist in other areas of scientific inquiry, such as anomalous weather or meteorite activity. Beyond its existing archives, NASA could act as a clearinghouse for civilian and commercial UAP data. During my work on the UAP Independent Study Team, it quickly became evident that there is no clear or well-publicized process for civilian pilots to report UAP sightings. The stigma associated with UAP hampers the number of pilots that would report such phenomena, but even for those who overcome the stigma, I believe the current FAA guidance is largely unknown and poorly understood. In order to effectively collect UAP data, the independent study team recommended the use of NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System, or ASRS. This system, which is administered by NASA and funded by the FAA, provides a confidential means for the reporting of safety violations in a voluntary and non-punitive manner. Over 47 years, the ASRS has collected nearly 2 million reports. ASRS is the perfect tool to collect UAP data, which could then be collated by NASA and shared with the public at large. Leveraging ASRS would be a treasure trove of UAP data, potentially hundreds of thousands of reports, supporting this hearing's goal of exposing the truth. And I'm grateful to our two co-chairs and other members who have already incorporated this idea into proposed legislation. At this hearing, and as others have demonstrated, the UAP issue is justifiably dominated by national security and defense. However, I would urge the subcommittees to keep in mind the numerous ways that NASA and the FAA, as well as commercial activities in the air, in space, and in the water, can generate a massive amount of invaluable data on anomalous phenomena. I cannot help but be excited by the potential for such an endeavor, since scientific discovery is driven by anomalies. It's the existence and study of anomalies that led to the theory of relativity, quantum mechanics, and nearly all of humanity's scientific breakthroughs. This is why the study of UAPs should be embraced, since whatever is occurring, the chance to garner new knowledge should never be ignored. We must be thorough in collecting information, fearless in making conclusions, and open to following the data, no matter how mundane or extraordinary the results may be. I began this testimony by praising the Joint Subcommittee members for their courage, and I will end by echoing that sentiment. As the saying goes, the truth is out there. We just need to be bold enough and brave enough to face it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of witnesses. So I would just ask, if it's yes or no, to please just tell me yes or no. If it requires more than that, be very succinct, because I would like to go down the line and ask as many questions as possible. So for the Admiral this morning first, former DoD official Chris Mellon reached out to you about satellite imagery from 2017 that depicts a UAP. What were the dates in 2017 when this occurred?
I can't share with you the details, ma'am, but I can do it in a closed setting, and I can also tell you the agency that wrote a report on it.
Okay, so who has the imagery?
I can tell you that in a closed setting.
Can you describe what was depicted in the satellite imagery? Just a description.
It was a UAP, ma'am.
That's it? No other description?
The term that the analysts used, they call it the button. It was a disc-shaped object.
Okay, where was it?
I can't tell you that, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay, Mr. Elizondo, you state in your testimony that, quote, advanced technologies not by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe, end quote. If these technologies are not made by any government, who's making them? Private companies, or are you implying they are crafted by a non-human intelligence?
Well, ma'am, that's precisely why we're here.
The Most High,
That
the
we're
Creator,
speaking over
the
decades,
Almighty God.
not just the last 10 years.
He's here.
to put this in perspective, when
Are these private companies you're implying, or is this non-human intelligence?
it may be both.
Okay.
When it comes to Blue Force Technologies, I would not be able to discuss.
Okay.
them.
Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs?
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals. I submitted for my book through the DOPSR process, which took a year to be reviewed. And what is in the book is what I was told I'm allowed to talk about.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs? Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay. Were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft? Yes or no?
yes.
Does the U.S. government have any reverse? Okay, we already answered that question about retrieval programs. Do any U.S. contractors have the same?
I would prefer to address in a closed session, ma'am.
Okay. In your book, you mentioned government employees who've been injured by UAPs placed on leave and receiving government compensation for their injuries. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How can the government deny we have recovered craft if they're paying people because they've been injured by recovered craft?
Ma'am, that's a great question. That's why I think we're here again, because I've seen the documentation by the U.S. government for several of these individuals who have sustained injuries as a result of a UAP incident.
It's a crazy idea, right? The hypocrisy and the logic. Okay, Mr. Schellenberger, I'm going to say it again to be very clear. Immaculate Constellation. What's its mission and how are they funded?
Its mission is to, as I stated, its mission is to, it's an unacknowledged special access program. Its mission is to document UAPs.
Okay, and do you, for your story and your report, do you have more than one credible source?
I do.
Sourcing, okay. And then why do you believe your sources to be credible? How do you judge the veracity of the documentation you've been provided about this program?
I checked the sources, and they are who they say they are. They are current or former government officials. I wanted to also add that I did not specify that they were Defense Department employees. I didn't specify the agency nor the gender.
Would they have included non-government employees, people that aren't employed by the government?
These are, I'm comfortable saying that these are government or previously government employees.
Any of them currently employed by a private contractor or private contractors?
I'd rather not say.
Okay. What's the key takeaway, just a few seconds, about the Immaculate Constellation document you provided us today?
I think that what the American people need to know is that the U.S. military and intelligence community are sitting on a huge amount of visual and other information, still photos, video photos, other sensor information, and they have for a very long time. And it's not those fuzzy photos and videos that we've been given. There's very clear,
High res.
high resolution.
How many visuals, graphics, videos, photos?
I mean, I've been told hundreds,
Wow.
thousands. I mean, I also wanted to say, because there was some conversation around concern around the revealing of these materials, revealing the source collections, but some of these are shot from helicopters using normal videos of oceans. I just think that's absurd that somehow you're going to be revealing some secret U.S. technology by revealing that you've photographed orbs off the coast of Kuwait.
Okay, thank you. I have 8 seconds. Mr. Gold, did the NASA independent study team get briefed on what you call OSAP? Very quickly.
I flagged the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Investigation Program to our chair and our DFO. We did not get briefed, but I believe it is definitely worth looking into. That was probably the largest UAP review effort ever, and I think there's a lot of interest data, including revealing Nimitz. I don't know if my fellow witness, Leo might want to, he did yeoman's work on it, might want to comment.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn to Mr. Moskowitz, who will be recognized for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So, Mr. Gold, you gave a whole diatribe for a couple of minutes about UAPs, science, data collection, stigma. A lot of non-believers in all of this would just ask a very simple question. Why? Why is it so hard? Right? Like, why are people, anytime they ask, why are they always thwarted? Why are they always judged? Why is they always have misinformation spread? Why is there always retribution? Why is it always met with an ear? What's the why? If it doesn't exist, why is it such a problem?
I think if you go through the history of science, Representative, it is always difficult for breakthroughs in new information, regardless of whether it's UAP or any other kind of discovery. And in science, we're supposed to be open, but when you break with the orthodoxy of what's believed, whether it's Galileo saying that
the Earth doesn't rotate, or the Earth rotates around the sun, or the sun doesn't rotate around the Earth. It's always challenging for new beliefs. And the more extraordinary those discoveries, the more extraordinary those new beliefs, it's very difficult. So I think this is natural. There's natural conservatism that when it comes to science, but this issue in particular has been very difficult, where again, even to attempt to study it becomes problematic. But every hearing like this, every news report, every video, documentaries. I was privileged to be part of something Dan Fair is putting together. I think many of us have interviewed for it, documented over 30 different government officials. Every brick in the wall will help get us closer to getting to the truth.
I appreciate that. Mr. Elizondo, did I have that correct?
Sir,
I'm a recovering lawyer, so I'm gonna put my hat on for a second. You said you signed a document. Love that. Who gave that to you?
the U.S. government, sir.
Okay, you have a copy of it?
It is stored in a skiff right now. I do not have possession of it. The U.S. government does.
What department of the U.S. government gave you this document?
I will say the Department of Defense. Unfortunately, I can't say in this forum much more than that.
You specifically said the document said you can't talk about crash retrieval. Well, you can't talk about Fight Club if there's no Fight Club.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just making an observation.
Yes, sir.
So that document that you signed, that you said exists, specifically said you can't talk about crash retrieval.
Correct, sir. It was a limitation on what because already I'd been speaking publicly about the topic. And so the document said you can continue saying X, Y, Z, but you cannot discuss the topic.
When you
of crash
give
retrieval.
me the atmosphere of signing this document. You're in a room by yourself,
I'm in a skiff with a security officer, sir.
just one-on-one. Anybody else?
There may have been an assistant as well. It was in a skiff within a Department of Defense facility.
Give me your background real quick.
My background is I went to school to study microbiology and immunology, entered into the U.S. Army, and after a very short stint in military intelligence, I became a counterintelligence special agent. As a civilian, later on I became a special agent in charge, running investigations in counterterrorism and counterespionage primarily, with some experience in counterinsurgency and counter-narcotics. And then in 2009 timeframe, when I came back to the Pentagon after a tour with the Director of National Intelligence, I quickly became part of a program that was originally called OSAP that evolved into the program now called ATIP, which is where those videos that we now see, the Go Fast, the Gimbal, the FLIR, that was part of our effort, sir.
Right. So you're not some conspiracy theorist. You actually have a legitimate background.
Well, sir, I'm certainly not a conspiracy theorist. I'm fact-based, just a fact.
So when you're in this room, I want to paint the picture of everybody. You're in this room, you're by yourself, you're in a skiff, you're handed a document. How long is the document?
It's about a page front and back. So basically you have some things they call trigraphs, which I cannot, again, talk.
How long were you given to sign the document?
As long as I need it, sir.
What if you didn't sign it?
Well, I suspect there'd be repercussions. I would have access to certain information.
Were you allowed to ask a lawyer, or weren't allowed to ask for a lawyer to review the document?
It was an option, but they probably wouldn't have allowed me to, because the document itself is pretty explicit about you have to be putting me in an interest. Let me try to thread a needle here. There are certain documents that we have in the U.S. government that allow people to have access to certain programs, whether it's a special, and I'm going to be very generic here, whether it's a special access program or controlled access program, SAP, CAP, whatnot.
How many people have to sign that document?
It depends how many people are going to get access to the information, sir.
Okay. Last question, Doctor, real quick, can you tell us about the Omaha incident in greater detail? I've read your background, right? Some people would label you as a member of the deep state, since you worked in government for a long period of time. But can you tell us more about that incident? You've written a lot about that.
I wrote a lot about incidents like it, Congressman, but that specific incident involved the USS Omaha, the littoral combat ship of the U.S. Navy operating off Southern California. I don't remember the exact date. It was within the last decade. And what the watchstanders on the bridge observed was a UAP, again, something that was aloft but had no observable exhaust or control surfaces. So it was something that couldn't be explained. And then they saw it enter the water from the atmosphere and going through the air-sea interface. And so thus exhibiting transmedium travel.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. I'll now recognize Mr. Grothman for 5 minutes of questioning.
Yeah, we'll start with Mr. Gallaudet. During a previous UAP hearing, Navy Commander David Fravor discussed the TikTok object engaged in 2004. Are you familiar with the incident, the TikTok incident?
Yes, sir.
That's almost 20 years ago, right?
Yes, sir.
It's been said there are more videos, documents, and reports related to this incident. Do you believe the information regarding the TikTok incident should be available to all members of Congress? In your expertise, what reason would the Department of Defense possibly have for not releasing information that's over 20 years old?
Thank you, Congressman. I don't think there's any good reason to withhold information and important data, especially of national security concern, from Congress.
Well, what would they say?
I will speculate, sir, that they don't want to share that kind of information because it reveals weaknesses in our ability to monitor and protect our airspace.
Okay. In your written testimony, you claim last year's UAP hearing before this oversight committee confirmed that UAP-related information is, well, it's not being withheld, but that elements of the government are engaging in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Could you elaborate on that statement a little?
Yes, sir. Earlier this year, I met with the DoD's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and what I thought would be a 90-minute meeting just to meet with leadership turned out to be an hours-long influence operation on me, where they attempted to convince me of the validity of the very flawed and error-ridden historical records report. In addition, they tried to have me question very valid UAP reports like the Tic Tac incident, and even coming to stating possibly that the Tic Tac was American technology. And of course, if you ask David Fravor or Alex Dietrich, the two witnesses, they were convinced it was otherwise. And they also cast discredit on various UAP whistleblowers and witnesses to question their validity and credibility as witnesses.
Okay. We'll go to Mr. Elizondo. I got that right, or not? At least
Close enough, sir.
You're familiar with the recent drone incursion over Langley Air Force Base?
Yes, sir.
The owners of these drones remain unclear. The U.S. military has not been able to give us in Congress an answer. Given your experience with the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, how frequently are UAP sightings over military installations? And secondly, I suppose hypothetically, you could have incursions over just, say, regular airports. Is it obvious these incursions are more likely over military facilities than just a random airport out there?
Yes, sir. There's definitely enough data to suggest that there is certainly some sort of relationship between sensitive U.S. military installations, also some of our nuclear equities, and also some of our Department of Energy sites. There is a long historical record that some of your colleagues may have, documentation that demonstrates this. This is not a new trend. This has been going on for decades, and that information's been obfuscated, unfortunately, from folks like you in this committee. And I think that's problematic because ultimately, at the end of the day, we have a significant situation here. We have something that can enter into U.S. airspace completely with no attribution.
And how long has this been going on?
Sir, decades. And there's information that will hopefully be entered into.
Can you think of any possible reason why they can't release any information they have on something, say, 15 or 20 years old?
Sir, if I could echo my colleague here, Admiral Gallaudet, I think one of the big issues that we have in the intelligence community and Department of Defense is we don't want to broadcast any potential vulnerabilities or weaknesses in our national defense systems or our intelligence collection platforms. Therefore, when you have a conversation where you address a problem for which there is no solution, it makes that a very uncomfortable conversation to have.
Okay, we'll switch to Mr. Schellenberger. The primary reason you're here today is because you published an article on the news publication that you own called Public, right? Alleging that new unnamed government whistleblowers come forward asserting that a highly classified program exists dedicated to recovery and reverse engineering of UAP technologies. What can you give us? What specific evidence you have, or that your source provided you to substantiate the claims about the existence of the Immaculate Constellation program?
Well, you have the report in front of you now, so you can see it for yourself. I checked the report, and I did not find it based on existing cases. It was new cases for me. I hadn't found anybody. So that answered for me that it was not obviously circular reporting, which is one of the big concerns in this space. I also had the name of the program confirmed by more than one additional source.
Okay, so thanks for watching. So all of the truth about the UFOs are back on the docket again. And those UFOs is the Almighty God. That's who's here. That's who's here. Okay. So we're just living in a new world. All the lies is being exposed. The Most High, the Almighty Creator, He is here. He's here. Those are the chariots of the Almighty Elohim of Israel, the Almighty Creator, the Almighty Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is really pronounced Jacob because there's no J's in Hebrew. Yes. Okay. So y'all, thanks for watching. Y'all have a wonderful Wednesday. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you'll be notified when I'm dropping new videos. Bye.